Hello everyone, welcome to BYJU'S exam prep. I'm Savitri Krishnamurthy, I'm your VARC mentor at BYJU'S. Today I'm going to take you through a detailed solutions actually of the slot 2, CAT 2021 slot 2. We will solve the entire VARC section in detail. So how am I going to go about this? We will read the passages together. If you have your answer sheets in front of you, fantastic. If you do not, then I'm going to read the passages with you and then we will answer the questions. Alright, if you have any doubt about whether it should be A or B or why is it not C, then please ask questions. We will not be talking too much about strategy and what you should have answered, what you shouldn't have answered, because we've already done it, but I will mention that this was a difficult passage and this was a tricky passage. To that extent, I will analyze it. Alright, are you ready to start? Okay. Let's look at the first passage. Okay, when you read the first passage and the first paragraph, you will have an idea if the passage is easy, moderate or difficult. It is easy to forget that most of the world's languages are still transmitted orally with no widely established written form. While speech communities are increasingly involved in projects to protect their language in print, on air and online, orality is fragile and contributes to linguistic vulnerability. Let me change the color of my ink. I'll change it to dark blue. Yeah, all right. But indigenous languages are about much more than unusual words and intriguing grammar. They function as vehicles for the transmission of cultural traditions. This is an important sentence. Indigenous languages, local languages are vehicles for transmission of cultural traditions, environmental understanding and knowledge. All are at risk when elders die and livelihoods are disrupted. So first paragraph looks easy. It's about languages. He says most of the languages are orally transmitted, not written, documented in a written manner. Because of this, it makes the language vulnerable, weak. So when communities are in trouble, when elders die, the language dies with them, roughly. Second, but push and pull factors lead to the decline of languages. So immediately you will say, he's talking of languages, elders die, language also dies, livelihoods are disrupted. Second, what are the factors that lead to the decline of languages? So second paragraph will stay in your mind, factors that lead to the decline of languages. What are they? Through war, famine, natural disasters, whole communities can be destroyed, taking their language with them to the grave, such as the indigenous populations of Tasmania, which were wiped out by colonists. Most commonly, speakers live on but abandon their languages in favor of another vernacular. One, natural disasters, they go. Second, speakers deliberately abandon their language in favor of another vernacular. A widespread process that linguistics refer to as language shifts, from which few languages are immune. So the second cause is language shifts. Why do language shifts happen? Such trading up and out of a speech form occurs for political, cultural and economic reasons. There are a lot of reasons why language shifts occur. Sometimes they are voluntary for economic and educational reasons. You shift your language for economic or educational reasons. Often amplified, made more by state coercion or neglect. Then he has given the example of Welsh, the language of the people of Wales. Long stigmatized and disparaged by the British state, this language, which was long criticized, disparaged by the British state, has rebounded with vigor. It's come back, all right. Many speakers of endangered, poorly documented languages have embraced new digital media with excitement. So when you are part of a language which is not well documented, which is endangered, digital media has turned out to be a huge benefit for them. How? Speakers of previously exclusively oral tongues are turning to the web as a virtual space for languages to live on. Internet technology is a powerful way to transmit oral traditions and cultural practices to survive or even thrive among mobile communities. And he gives the example of traditional wedding song recorded by Nepali migrants in London and watched by Nepalis across the border in Nepal. Now, not across the border, way across. All right. Third, now, why is this happening? Globalization is often uncritically pilloried. Pilloried means criticized as a major threat to linguistic diversity. But whenever you see this but, always be careful. But in fact, globalization is as much a process as it is an ideology. So he says globalization, the process is not so much to criticize when it comes to language. The real forces behind cultural homogenization are unbending beliefs exchanged through globalization. So it's the belief of people. What is the belief of people? That monolingualism is the best, and this monolingualism which is prevalent in the West is monolingual, they follow only one language, and they have the unbending belief that their language is the best. That, he says, is the problem. That is the reason for cultural homogenization more than globalization, the phenomenon itself. Next, monolingualism, the condition of being able to speak only one language, is regularly accompanied by a deep-seated conviction in the value of that language over all others. If you speak only one language, the author says, you have a deep-seated belief that that language is superior to all others. All right, the next one. Across the largest economies that make up the group of 8, being monolingual is still often the norm, with multilingualism appearing unusual or exotic. The monolingual mindset stands in sharp contrast to the reality of most of the world, which has been more multilingual than unilingual. So what's the author saying? The world is run by multilingualism. Therefore, we should be looking more at multilingualism, and our concern should be monolingualism, not globalization. Yes, there's a question from Vinayak about, Vinayak, I told you right at the beginning of this session, we have already talked about percentiles and scores. This session is an analysis of the answers. So where did I go wrong? If I went wrong, if I went correct, yes, my reasons for marking this. Okay, it's a detailed solutions class. All right. Okay, we've already put your score in BYJU'S exam prep score calculator, and you will get your percentile. But percentiles we cannot say. You have to wait till the actual result. But rough percentile, our experts have already given. Right. I hope that answered your question. Last paragraph. Multilingualism can help us live in a more connected and more interdependent world. Last paragraph, he is saying multilingualism is good. It can help us live in this world. Understood? First part, he talked about how languages are declining. Second part, what are the different factors which are contributing to the decline of languages? Third factor, who is to be blamed for this decline of languages? Monolingualism and the West, not the process of globalization itself. Last paragraph, multilingualism will help us to live in this more and more connected and interdependent world. If you remember the passage like this, the questions are very easy to answer. I hope you all got these questions right. Let's just look at it. What is the author in favor of? If you read the passage and remember the structure of the passage, what is he in favor of? An expanded state role in the preservation of languages. Did he talk about state should work hard and preserve languages? Language shifts across languages. Is he in favor of that? But he definitely is in favor of greater multilingualism. He definitely is not in favor of cultural homogenization. The last paragraph is all about the advantages of multilingualism. Therefore, the answer is greater multilingualism, or answer 3. I hope you got that right in the exam. The author lists all of the following reasons for the decline or disappearance of a language except, remember the factors of paragraph 2. and little bit at the end of paragraph 1. What are the factors the author has mentioned? People shifting away from their own language to study another language, that's a language shift, so that's why his native language may go into decline. Government promoting certain languages, state coercion can amplify this, he says, and he gives the example of Welsh as a language which was often ill-treated by Britain. So second has been mentioned, a catastrophic event. Yes, when a catastrophic event happens, the entire communities are washed out, the elders die, the entire language goes with them, the culture also goes with them. 1 to 3 have been mentioned. 4, focus of only a few languages. As now he has spoken of internet use, saying that languages are being preserved and transmitted across boundaries. So therefore the answer is author has not listed 4 as the reason for the disappearance of languages, right? Okay, let's look at the next one. We can infer all of the following about indigenous languages from the passage except. That means 3 will be facts given in the passage, that or facts, inferences that you can, conclusions you can draw based on what's given in the passage. 1 would not be. Why would it not be? Either it would contradict what is said in the passage, or it would have something that you say, oh, I can't infer this, this hasn't been mentioned, or this is contradicts what has been said in the passage. Has he mentioned, let's go from 4. They are repositories of traditional knowledge about environment and culture. Yes, he mentioned it in paragraph 1. They are in danger of being wiped out. They are vulnerable because they are mostly transmitted orally. Yes, he said that. People are trying to document these languages. They are using the internet. They're doing all sorts of, they're using all kinds of devices and technology that is available to them to preserve them. Has he talked anything about vocabulary and grammar of these languages becoming challenging? He said indigenous languages are more than just about vocabulary and unfamiliar words. There's more to the language than that. But that doesn't mean he's saying that the vocabulary is challenging to document. Therefore, the answer is 1. Okay, let's look at the last question. Why did the author mention Wales? If you remember, I underlined it. Wales, often stigmatized by Britain, rebounded back. It was revived. It came back. It hit back. That's what he said. So Wales as a language, because of state coercion, it didn't do well, and then it hit back. It made a comeback, right? So what is the answer? Vulnerable languages can rebound with state effort. Did he talk about state helping vulnerable languages to come back? No. When often pilloried, globalization in fact supports linguistic revival. Did he say Welsh came back because of globalization? Efforts to integrate Welsh speakers in the English speaking fold have been fruitless. Has he even mentioned any efforts? No, right? Languages can revive even after their speakers have gone through a language shift. Yes, Welsh had gone through a language shift. The reason for Welsh language shift was state coercion, but it came back. So that from there we can infer that sometimes even a language is on the decline, it can come back, right? So the answer is 4. Okay. Now in this passage, the passage was not very difficult to read, very easily given. The points followed one another. It has a very easy structure. Excuse me. So 3 out of 4 questions you could have easily got correct. All 4 also was possible. Let's look at the next passage, which is not that simple. The next passage was on Indian nationalism, which is the real reason why we said slot 2 was tougher than slot 1 and 3, because in 1 and 3 there were 2 passages which were moderate to easy and 2 passages which were tougher. Slot 2, all 2 passages were difficult, and the other 2 were more towards the difficult part of moderately difficult rather than moderately easy. So you can't call them totally difficult. They were difficult to read, but the questions were easier. But the problem with this passage is it will take you longer than normal to read this passage, right? If we read the first passage very quickly, this one would take us more time, because you will see why. I have elaborated a framework for analyzing the contradictory pulls on Indian nationalist ideology in its struggle against the dominance of colonialism and the resolution it offered to those contradictions. Now you read this carefully. What is this passage about? Contradictory pulls on Indian nationalist ideology in its struggle against the dominance of colonialism and the resolution it offered to those contradictions. It faced contradictions, and how did it resolve these contradictions? Okay, briefly, this resolution, how did it resolve the contradictions? This resolution was built on a separation of the domain of culture into two spheres, material and spiritual. Now, in my rough copy, I wrote down that this is what I'm going to do into material and spiritual. This is what I wrote down. It was in the material sphere that the claims of Western civilization were the most powerful. Western, stronger on the material science. Why? Science, technology, rational forms of economic organization, modern methods of state cards. This gave the European countries the strength to subjugate non-European people. The Europeans colonized us. Why? Because of all these materially superior skills and technologies that they had at their disposal. To overcome this domination, the cultural people, the colonized people, had to learn those superior techniques of organizing material lives and incorporate them within their own cultures. Okay, so they are more powerful than me because they have all these material traits. So what did the colonized people have to do? Colonies such as India and other colonies, what did they have to do? They had to learn those technologies. They had to learn those material traits of organizing material life and incorporate them within their own cultures. But, there's a but there. What's the problem with doing that? Learn from the West and do what they are doing to become superior. But the problem is they could not imitate the West in every aspect of life. They had to only choose this part but not every part. If you imitate the West, then the very distinction between the West and East would vanish. The self-identity of the national culture itself will be threatened. So the West, he says, culture can be divided into the material and the spiritual. The Western nations were strong on the material aspect of the culture, organizing statecraft, this and that. Now, we, the colonized people, were obviously, he's going to talk about the spiritual part of it, had to learn the material aspect of the culture from them because they were superior to us. We wanted to learn that. At the same time, we could not totally imitate them. If we imitated them, then we would lose our national identity, right? So, the discourse of nationalism shows that the material spiritual distinction was condensed into an analogous but ideologically powerful dichotomy. So what did they do? The material spiritual distinction was in an analogous way. What did they do? They condensed that and they made it into an ideologically more powerful distinction. The dichotomy was material spiritual became outer and inner, and remember, outer and inner is more powerful ideologically than material and spiritual. All right, what was this outer and inner? In the outer and inner distinction, the author is now explaining. Matters of concrete day-to-day living separates the social sphere into ghar and bahar. Okay, ghar, your house, bahar, a dichotomy means difference or breaking into two. Okay, so dichotomous means into division into two. Dichotomy means division. That's the exact word I want. So applying the inner outer distinction of the matter of social sphere, the social space was divided into the home and the world. The world is external, outer. Okay, the domain of the material. The home is inner, one's spiritual self. The world outside is a treacherous terrain, okay, of the pursuit of material interests, outer material interests, and where practical considerations reign supreme. Outer material practical considerations. it is also typically the domain of the male. So this is material and it is the domain of the male. All right. The home in its essence must remain unaffected by all these irreligious activities, and that is the domain of the woman. All right. So this has also become a gender distinction. Outside domain of the male, material pursuits. Inside home, spiritual, it is represented by the woman. So one gets an identification of social roles by gender to correspond to the separation of the social space into Ghar and Bahar. Okay, the social space was changed into outside and inside, and gender also was divided: outer male, inner woman, female. Got it? Next. Now, if we had all this time to read in the exam, the passage was easy. The only way a CAT question setter puts pressure on you is the pressure of time. Right? Next. The colonial situation and the ideological response of nationalism to the critique of Indian tradition introduced an entirely new substance and effected their transformation. The material-spiritual dichotomy to which the terms world and home correspond had acquired a very special significance in the nationalist mind. This is the most important part. This material, spiritual, outer, inner became very important for the nationalists, because the whole thing is about nationalists, nationalism and their ideology. The world was where the European powers had changed the non-European people, and by virtue of its superior material culture had subjugated them. This is outside, this is the world. But the nationalists asserted that it colonized the external part of us, but it did not colonize the inner essential identity of the East. And what is the inner essential identity of the East? It is distinctive, special only to the East, superior spiritual culture. Okay? And during the entire national struggle, the effort was to protect, preserve and strengthen this inner core. Done. Last paragraph. Once we match this new meaning of home and world dichotomy, now we've understood what is the home and world dichotomy. All of us have understood it. He says, now this new meaning of home and world dichotomy with the identification of social roles by gender, we get the ideological framework within which nationalism answered the women's question. What is my role? Nationalism answered the women's question by talking about outside and inside. The more important aspect, the spiritual aspect, the inner aspect, the home aspect is what is the role of women. Here, this is again an important part because there's a question on it. It's a grave error to see in this, as liberals are apt to at the many marks of social conservatism in national practice. So how do the liberals view the nationalist practice? The role outside, inside and male and woman, they see it as a social conservatist way of looking at things. Women in the house, the usual gender role, right? So the liberals tend to look at this as a very socially conservative way of dividing society. All right? And then he says, but it is not that. And he ends the passage there. Question 1. Which one would weaken? Now, many of you may not have answered this passage. That's fine. You didn't have the time or you felt it was too tough. But we will answer it and we will see if you had spent some time in reading it at the end, if you had the time. This was a very doable passage. Okay? 2 out of 4 questions you could have done. The other 2, yeah, were difficult. Okay, I'm not saying no. This was a difficult passage. All right. But not as difficult as another one which was waiting for us, lurking in the background. Which one would weaken the author's claims in the passage? Now remember, strengthen, weaken questions are normally based on the author's main argument. What was the author's main argument here? That Europeans colonized us because they were superior to us. Culture can be divided into material and spiritual. The Europeans or the Westerners were superior to us in terms of materialism, material aspect of culture, they were superior to us. But the spiritual aspect or the inner world, we were still strong. Correct? The Europeans changed us, we borrowed from the Europeans where the outer or the material aspect was concerned, But where our spiritual aspect was concerned, we were distinctly Eastern, different, spiritual and all that. If this is the author's main point, which one would go against it? Indian nationalists rejected the cause of English education. At any point has English education language been mentioned? Irrelevant, right? The colonial period saw the hybridization of Indian culture in all realms as it came in contact. Now, author says only material culture was changed, our inner culture remained the same. If the colonial period saw the hybridization of Indian culture in all realms, there was no distinction, outer, inner, spiritual, material, this would go against the author's main point. Correct? So 2 is our answer. Let's quickly look at it. Industrial revolution, has he mentioned this? The forces of colonial modernity played a role in anti-colonial. Did he talk anything about colonial modernity? One word here would tell you these were not mentioned. And you know that this is the main point, so 2 is the answer. Got it? Okay, so the answer is 2. Next one, what is the opposite? Oh, you understood it as opposite. Okay, all right. You sometimes understand it as opposite. Dichotomy understood. See, a little bit of vocabulary would help you answer questions better. Dichotomy means division, right? Okay, all right, next question. On the basis of information in the passage, all of the following are true except 3 options will be true, 1 will be false. Which one is it? He says spiritual material dichotomy of Indian nationalism. We've read a lot about it. We've recapped all the main points. So you don't have to go back to the passage for this. Helped in safeguarding the identity of Indian nationalism. Yes. So that cannot be the answer because we are looking at an except answer. So one which doesn't fit. Was not as ideologically powerful as the inner, outer. All of the following are true except. Yeah. True. Okay, inner outer is stronger ideologically than spiritual material, the author said, so 2nd is correct. 3rd, constituted the premise of ghar bahar dichotomy. Yes, inner outer, spiritual material, whatever you call it, the premise is ghar, inner, woman, spiritual. Okay, outside, world, material, western. Therefore, yes. Did he say age-old oppositions in Indian culture and was it a continuation? The author said no. In the last bit also he says, don't think of it like that. Right? So the answer is obviously 4. Didn't have to go back. But you had to spend that much time, you had to spend that much time to understand the passage properly. And those of you who didn't have the time ended up not doing this passage. Alright. Which one best describes the liberal perception of Indian nationalism? Because I had read the passage, you and I had attempted it, I underlined. What is the liberal perception of Indian nationalism? Go back to the passage, the last line here, what did he say? The liberals see it as social conservatism in the nationalist practice. Which one did they see as social conservatism? Gender. The gender division of society, right? So, what is the liberal perception of Indian nationalism? That they divided society, the gender division of society was very conservative. Which option does that? Indian nationalist discourses provided an ideological principle of selection. This is what this guy said, the author said. They reaffirmed traditional gender roles for women. Will that be right? Yes, they went with the socially conservative traditional gender roles, women in the house, male outside. Therefore, the answer is 2. Okay? Alright, question 8. What is the contradictory pull that the author refers to? Remember in the first paragraph, the author talks of the contradictory pulls on Indian nationalism, right? What do you think was the contradictory pull? What did he say? Indian nationalism fought against the colonial powers. It wanted to fight against the colonial powers. It realized that the colonial powers were stronger because the material part of culture, they divided in fighting, they realized that culture can be divided into material and spiritual. The West was strong materially, organizing statecraft, all that, and therefore they could colonize us. So we learnt that aspect, but we didn't want to imitate them. We wanted to keep our distinct identity, correct? So this is the contradictory pull. One part we will borrow from them, one part we will not. We want to keep as separate. So this is the tug. Which option does that? Despite its fight against colonial domination, okay, we are fighting against the colonials, Indian nationalism had to borrow from the colonizer in the material sphere. We had to learn from them the material aspect of it. Yes, that's true. Okay, now for those of you who got this as option 1, easy. Okay, but for those of you who didn't get it, because the option order was changed, despite its scientific and technological inferiority, Indian nationalism had to fight against colonial domination. What is the contradiction in this? We were inferior, so we could not fight. We had to fight. So where is the contradiction here? He is saying, what is the contradictory pull? Contradictory pull is you are fighting against them, at the same time you are borrowing something and learning from them. So there is no contradiction in 2. 3, despite its spiritual superiority, it had to fight, obviously, because they were materially stronger. So where is the contradiction? The fight was, there is no contradiction there. Despite its fight against, had to borrow from the colonizer in the spiritual sphere is wrong. 2 and 3 do not show any contradiction. 1 shows a contradiction. 1 is the answer. Okay, all right. The next one. Supposedly one of the easiest passages. I made a very silly mistake in this passage. I'll tell you what. But let's start. Again, I will read it along with you. I will underline the important aspects of the passage and then we'll look at the questions. Alright? Okay. Many people believe that truth conveys power. Alright? Hence, sticking with the truth is the best strategy for gaining power. This is what many people believe. Unfortunately, this is just a comforting myth. This is a myth. That stick to the truth to gain power is a myth. Why? Truth and power have a far more complicated relationship because in human society, power means 2 very different things. So, truth and power are in a complicated relationship. This is what drove me to go to the wrong answer. On the one hand, okay, thank you so much. Let me go and have a little bit of water before I talk to you. My tech engineer came and offered me water because he realized my throat was going dry. On the one hand, power means having the ability to manipulate objective realities. Okay, yeah, this is what power is. Building atoms, whatever. Okay. The planet Earth was conquered by human sapiens rather than by chimpanzees because we were the only mammals that can cooperate in large numbers. So, one hand, power is the ability to manipulate objective realities. This kind of power is closely tied to truth. But there is also another power. It also means the ability to manipulate human beliefs. So, power has 2 meanings. Objective reality, and it also means manipulating human beliefs. And we could conquer the world because only mammals could cooperate in large numbers and propagate these common human beliefs. The dual nature of power and truth results in the curious facts that we humans know many more truths than any other animal, but we also believe in much more nonsense. Alright, next. When it comes to uniting people around a common story, fiction has 3 advantages. What's he saying? He says that truth believes in objective reality, power is based on the ability to manipulate objective reality. Number 1, this is what you remember. Second, power also means the ability to manipulate human beliefs, thereby getting people to cooperate effectively. Let me just erase all this. Okay. 2 ways he looks at power. These are the 2. Next, when we are talking of a common story, making people cooperate, right? Fiction has 3 advantages over truth, and he tells you what are the advantages that fiction has over truth. First, Truth is universal, fiction is local. Therefore, when you want to distinguish yourself from the rest of the world, you resort to fiction because it's local. If you want to distinguish our tribe from foreigners, a fictional story will serve as a better identity marker than a true story. Truth is the same for everybody. But fiction is not the same for everybody. So he says fiction is local. Second, the second huge advantage of fiction over truth has to do with the handicap principle, which says reliable signals must be costly to the signaler. Otherwise, they can easily be faked by cheaters. If you rely on the truth, the reliable signals are costlier because you don't want cheats to copy it. Therefore, if political loyalty is signaled by believing it is a true story, anybody can fake it. But believing ridiculous and outlandish story exacts greater cost and is therefore a better sign of loyalty. Ask me to believe something ridiculous. If I believe it because you are saying it, that's a better test of loyalty. That's a stronger test of loyalty. Alright? Okay. Third and most important. Remember the most important part. Truth is often painful and disturbing. Hence, if you stick to unalloyed reality, few people will follow you. If you stick to pure truth, few people will follow you. And then he gives the example of an American presidential candidate. He says if the presidential candidate tells the public the entire truth, he will not win the elections. So people cannot handle pure truths. Therefore, you need to lie. Alright. Even if we need to pay some price for deactivating our rational faculties, the advantage of increased social cohesion are so big that fictional stories routinely triumph over truth in human history. Now, what is he saying? He says fiction brings about social cohesion. People obviously want social cohesion, people to come together. And therefore, the advantages of that is so big that fictional stories often win over the truth in human history. Falsehood has won over truth. Why? Because falsehood has resulted in social cohesion, in people coming together. Scholars have known this for thousands of years, and that is why scholars have often to decide. He's saying scholars know this. And because of this, they have decided whether they serve the truth or social harmony. So they have this choice to make. Should I serve truth? If I serve truth, there will be a lot of problems. Or should I look for social cohesion? Should they aim to unite people by making sure everyone believes in the same fiction? Or should they let people know the truth even at the price of disunity? This is the dilemma for scholars. Easy passage, read easily, provided you kept track of the main points. Let's look at the questions. Remember the question. The wording of the question is very important. The author would support none of the following except. That means he won't support any of this, he will only support one option. Which one option will the author support? That's what the question is asking. There are definite advantages of promoting fiction, but there need to be a limit to pervasive belief in myths. Did he say this also? Next, while unalloyed truth means pure truth is not recommended, leaders should stay as close to it as possible. Has he given any advice that I would say leaders should do this or do that? He just gave the example of the American president. But has he made it sound like leaders should do this? So is 2 the answer? People cannot handle unvarnished truth. He used the term unalloyed truth. Yes, this part is correct. So leaders retain power by deviating from it. Yes, this looks like a good answer. So people cannot accept truth. Therefore, leaders also don't give them pure truth. So they stick to the dilute version or maybe some other version. Therefore, the correct answer is 3. Alright, okay, next one. The central theme of the passage is the choice between what? Now, stupidly, I had marked this. I don't know what came over me to mark that. Is it the choice between truth and power? No. The author is not saying either you be truthful or you lose power. Is it that? throughout the passage he says, unvarnished truth people can't keep. So the central theme is not the tussle between truth and power. Is it leaders who unknowingly spread fiction and those who intentionally? There is no choice, there is no mention of intention there. Okay, he talked about fiction as opposed to truth. Okay, the tussle is not between truth and power, Sai. Alright, the tussle is between how much do I want truth or social cohesion. So, attaining social cohesion and propagating objective truth. Go back to this line. Let me rub this here. This is the answer. The answer to the question is here, this one. This sums up the entire passage. First paragraph, truth and power have a complicated relationship. That does not make it the main point of the passage. That does not make it the main question. What should you decide between? Second, what is the meaning of power? He tells you. The ability to manipulate objective reality, the ability to manipulate human beliefs. Second part done. Third paragraph, what did he say? There is a people, and when he talks about manipulating human beliefs, he's saying that by manipulating human beliefs, by telling them some common stories, you can unite people. And the advantage of this, he introduced fiction. Somebody is asking, why did he introduce fiction? To talk about common beliefs. Those beliefs are not truths. Those beliefs are deviating from the truth. They are just being told so that people can come together. And then he gives you three advantages of fiction. That is, he's talked of fiction as something opposed to truth. Correct? And in the end he says, what should therefore scholars know this for centuries, that you cannot give just pure truth to people. So what is the dilemma for them? How much should I unite people or should I give them the truth? Because telling pure truth would be a problem. It would result in disrupting life. Therefore, the main problem here is, where is it? Yeah, that the choice is between truth and social cohesion. Okay, I was so upset when I saw my answer sheet and I said, how did I mark truth and power? I don't know what came over me. I've never got a central theme question wrong, at least as far as I remember. And I said, like, I've been teaching students this now. I could relate to a student in terms of they're not even close, Sai. I'll tell you why they're not close. Because the choice is not between truth and power. The choice is between how much truth. Scholars are divided. So are politicians, between truth and social cohesion. That if I can make people believe in certain myths, they will come together. So the advantage of social cohesion versus unalloyed truth. Truth and social cohesion, that's what it is about. Okay, but yeah, if it had said that two words which are important in the passage, yeah, truth and power. The relationship between truth and power, that is true. But that is not the choice that the author is talking about. The scholar example is a clear example of that. It's a clear indication of that. Okay, we should have seen it. Yeah, exactly. I just looked at the central theme only. I don't know what came over me. So I can really understand why you marked that. I got 4 questions wrong in the entire paper, and this was one of them. And whenever I can accept that I got para-jumbles wrong. I can accept I got one question in the next passage wrong, because I just marked it. I said, let me see. But this I cannot accept. It's so difficult. I said, where did I go wrong? How did I go wrong? You know, sometimes we don't read properly, and sometimes we interpret it as something else. And that's what you should watch out for. Okay, next question. This is an interesting one. Which quote, okay, which of the following quotes could we argue the author emphasizes the importance of fiction? In which quote has he made fiction look way more important than it actually is? Very simple way to look at the answer. Just look at the quotes. Scholars often had to decide whether they served the truth or social harmony. Should they aim to unite people by making sure everybody believed in the same fiction, or should they let people know the truth? The scholars have often been torn. Should we make people believe in the same fiction or truth? Okay, likely. Sticking with the truth is the best strategy. Where is he talking about fiction here? How is he overemphasizing the importance of fiction here? Truth and power have a far more complicated relationship. Where has he talked about fiction here? On the one hand, power means the ability to manipulate objective realities. Where has he talked about fiction here? The only answer which talked about fiction is the first one. And it does overemphasize the importance of fiction. So if you didn't have the time and you read the options, this is what I did. I marked one. It was in the last couple of seconds that I marked it, because none of the other options have fiction in it. And when you really see, yes, is this really, I mean, fiction is so important, but not important. The other options are so easy, they're not even talking about fiction. Therefore, that's the answer. 1. Got it? All right. What does the author imply? Scholars and successful leaders. What is the dilemma they face between fiction and telling the public the truth? How to balance truth and social unity, how to create social cohesion better than in the past, need to leverage both types of power to remain in office, use myths to attain first type of power. Which one? Between truth and social cohesion, social unity, common belief, commonality, coming together, groupism, all are synonyms. So the answer is 1. Easy again, right? Okay, now this has to be the most difficult passage of all 3 slots, right? This slot definitely it was the most difficult passage, all 3 slots also. Because if this was the, in my set, this is the last of the passages. So you just had finished 3 and you said, okay, maybe now something on business or science or something easier would appear, because we've already done, one on nationalism, and here suddenly, oh my God, okay, let's read and let's simplify it to ourselves. It has been said that knowledge, or the problem of knowledge, is the scandal of philosophy. What a lovely term. Okay, all right, scandal of philosophy, knowledge. Don't try to understand. Okay, the scandal of philosophy is apparent. What is the scandal? Philosophy's apparent inability to show how, when, and why we can be sure of something, indeed that we know anything. What is the scandal of philosophy? Do we know anything? How will we know anything? Okay, understood. Philosopher Michael Williams writes, is it possible to obtain knowledge at all? This problem is pressing because there are powerful arguments, some very ancient, for the conclusion that it's not. So what is Williams saying? It's not possible to know anything. Fine. Skepticism is the skeleton in Western rationalism's closet. Really? Okay, fine. Leave it, whatever it means. While it is not clear that the scandal matters to anyone but philosophers, who bothers about scandal of philosophy? It only bothers philosophers. Philosophers point out that it should matter to everybody. Everyone should be concerned about the scandal of philosophy. Is it possible to know anything at all? We can't know knowledge. Knowledge is not possible. That's what they are saying. They explain, unless we ground our claims to knowledge as such, distinguish it from the conception, from mere opinion. Okay, let me rub this. So what do philosophers claim? They say that unless we can ground our claims to knowledge as such and distinguish it from mere opinion, superstition, whatever, then the actions we take on the basis of presumed knowledge will be irrational and unjustifiable. Simplify this if there is a question on it. What do the philosophers say? Why is the scandal of philosophy important? Why is knowing whether knowledge is possible important? Unless we can ground our claim of knowledge. Yes, I know what is knowledge, I have knowledge, I know what it is. Unless we can differentiate knowledge from superstition and belief, our actions based on the knowledge will be irrational and unjustifiable. This is the only simplification you need to make. Move on, because we don't have the time. This is all quite serious sounding, but also are the rattlings of the skeleton, that is the skeptic's contention. Okay, this is one part of it. But there's the skeptic's contention. Contention means argument, that we cannot be sure that we know anything. We can never be sure that we know anything. This is what the skeptic is saying. Not if we think of knowledge as something like having a current mental representation of reality. We cannot know at all. Okay? And not if we think of reality as things themselves independent of our perceptions, ideas, or descriptions. So what does the skeptic say? He says, if you think of knowledge as reality which is independent of our perception, that knowledge is not possible. All right? Okay. And then he says, he gives the example. Okay. Since reality under that concept is outside our ken, we have no way to compare our mental representation. If you keep reality as independent of our perceptions, then we cannot catch a glimpse of things in themselves from the corner of our eye. Whatever you are seeing, you'll say, I don't know what it is. So he gives those examples. He says, knowledge cannot be seen as independent of our perceptions. This is what people who challenge the view of the earlier view would say. Now, third paragraph. There are a number of ways to handle the situation. The most common is to ignore it. The author is saying that some people would consider ignoring it as one of the ways to handle the situation. People outside the academy are unaware or unperturbed by the philosophical scandal of knowledge and go about our lives without too many epistemic anxieties. How and what and going into the root of what is knowledge, we don't bother about it. We hold our beliefs and presumptive knowledges more or less confidently. We hold our beliefs about knowledge quite confidently. And what is the basis of our confidence in our knowledge? It depends on how we acquired the knowledge, okay, how broadly and strenuously they seem to be shared or endorsed by various relevant people. Based on this, we are confident. I know this is correct. How do you know this is correct? I read it in a book. I know this is correct. How do you know? All my friends, all the newspapers, all the television channels say it. Therefore, I know it is correct. We are confident and we don't go beyond that. Okay? That part was easy. All right? Now, let's look at the questions. We cannot catch a glimpse. This had been given in brackets. Now, which means I have to go back to what it means. We cannot catch a glimpse of things in themselves round the corner of our eyes. We cannot form an idea of reality that floats above our processes of our conceiving it. When did he give this example? He gave this example here in the second paragraph. When he talks about, when he counters that don't think of reality, if we think of knowledge as our correct mental representation of reality, not if we think of reality as something, of things as they are in themselves, independent of our perceptions, ideas, of descriptions. If we think of reality as knowledge as independent of our perception, ideas on reality, then this will not happen. The quote will not happen. We cannot form an idea of reality that floats above the processes of our conceiving it. So what's the author is saying? What is the author saying? Knowledge is not that. If you think of knowledge like that, then that's not happening. So what is he saying? Knowledge of reality cannot be merged with the process of conceiving it. If reality of things are independent of our eyesight, is he only meaning eyesight? He's given the example of eyesight. Our knowledge of reality flows above our subjective perception of it, or reality of things is independent of our perception, then logically we cannot perceive the reality. The reality of something is bound in our perception of the reality. If it is not, then we cannot perceive a lot of things. That's what he is saying. So the answer is 4. Alright, next one. He says, from the next one, the question becomes easy. The passage was very difficult to read, but when you look at the questions, we hold our beliefs and presumptive knowledge more or less confidently, usually depending on something. Which one of the following broadly captures what we depend on? Remember, in the last paragraph, he talked about this. What did he say? He said, we hold, let me erase this so that it becomes easy. We hold our beliefs and presumptive knowledge more or less confidently, depending on how we acquire them and how broadly and strenuously they seem to be shared and endorsed by our circles. So, on what basis? How much of a stake we have in them? What resources? Did he talk about stake in resources? No. How we come to hold them, how widely they are held in our social circles. Right? So the answer is 3. It's exact same words as it is used in the passage. So that question 13 was difficult, 14 is easy. 15. The author discusses all of the following except. Now you have a rough idea what the author talked about. Skeptics believe that we can never fully know anything if by knowing we mean knowledge of a reality that is independent of the knower. Correct or not? Correct. He talked about this. Philosophers maintain that the scandal of philosophy should be the concern of everyone. We are not bothered about it, but philosophers say you should be bothered about it. The best way to deal with skepticism about the veracity of knowledge is to ignore it. Did the author say that? He said some of the various ways in which you can deal with this, but some people ignore it. Is he saying ignoring it is the best way? No, therefore the answer is 3. Got it? So if you really see questions 13 to 16, the passage was difficult, question 13 was difficult, but if you could have left it, okay? The author of the passage is most likely to support which one of the following statements? The actions taken on the basis of presumed knowledge are rational and justified only if we are confident, that that knowledge is widely held. For the skeptic, if we think of reality as independent of our perceptions, we should aim to know what reality independently to. Did he say that? The scandal of philosophy is we might not know anything at all about reality. We think of reality as independent of our perceptions, ideas or descriptions. Is it this? The confidence with which we maintain something to be true is usually independent of the source of the alleged truth. Did he say this? So what is the answer to 16? Either this or this. Right? So now, the actions that are taken on the basis of presumed knowledge are rational if we are confident that the knowledge is widely believed. We said that? We said we are confident of our knowledge. So between 1 and 3, 3 is the correct answer. Let us erase this. Okay. Now, let's move on to the section which was a mark scoring section. The parajumbles, parasummaries and odd one out. Now, that was a mixed bag. Alright. The good part about the summary was that the passages of the summaries were short. So, you could read them, reread them, get the main points at your fingertips. Okay. But typically, when the passages are short, the summary options look confusing. They look very similar to one another. So the best way to go about any summary question always is to know your main points at your fingertips before you look at the options, right? All right. Let's look at the first one. The unlikely alliance of the incumbent industrials and the distressed unemployed worker is especially powerful among the debris of corporate bankruptcies and layoffs. Okay. He is saying there is an alliance, an unlikely alliance, normally you wouldn't expect it, between an industrialist and a distressed unemployed worker. There is this alliance, and that has become especially strong because of corporate bankruptcies and layoffs. Okay, fine. How is it? In an economic downturn, the capitalist is more likely to focus on the cost of competition emanating from free markets than on the opportunities they create. So the capitalist is concerned with the cost of competition. He's not bothered about opportunities he creates. He's only bothered about the cost of competition. Okay. Second part. The unemployed worker will find many others in a similar condition and with similar anxieties to his, which will make it easier for them to organize together. Alright, so the unemployed worker, he is not employed. He has a lot of problems. He has a lot of people who have a similar, who are in the same boat as him. So it is easy. There are a lot of people with similar problems, similar anxieties, similar pressures, which makes it easier for them to organize themselves into a group. Using the cover of and political organization provided by the distressed, the capitalist captures the political agenda. This is the most important line of the summary. What does the capitalist do? He uses the cover and the political organization provided by the distressed unemployed worker. The distressed unemployed worker has come together. But they all are together. He uses the cover and the political organization provided by the distressed unemployed worker, and he captures and maintains to run his political agenda. Which option expresses this best? In an economic downturn, the capitalist uses the anxieties of the unemployed and their political organization, all right, to set the political agenda to suit their economic interests. Good. Exactly what has been said here with the background. Let's look at the second one. An economic downturn creates competition because of which capitalists capture. He says, did he say anything about this? He's only bothered about the cost of competition. Did he say it creates competition? Third, an unlikely alliance of industrialists happens in which they come together to unite politically and capture the political agenda. It leaves out the part of how the capitalist exploits this for his own benefit. Here he seems to make it look like one of those hunky-dory cooperative movements. So this misrepresents the main point of the passage. The purpose is to stifle competition in the free market. This is irrelevant. Therefore, the answer is 1. All right? Okay, next one. Which one is this? This is an key in the sequence of 4 numbers. This is a non-MCQ para-jumble. Easy one. Today generally wouldn't be the beginning. How would you solve your non-multiple choice para-jumbles? Read the entire sequence. Try to identify what looks like a starting sentence, what 2 sentences do you think go together, and use trial and error to decide which one works, right? But today there is an epochal challenge to rethink and reconstitute the vision and practice of development as a shared responsibility. All right, today it's a challenge to think of the vision and practice of development as a shared responsibility. We are at a crossroads now in our vision and practice of development. Looks like a good starting sentence, right? Rather than but today. This calls for the cultivation of an appropriate ethical mode of being in our lives, which enables us to realize this global and planetary situation of shared living and responsibility. So we are assuming that this global and situation of shared living and responsibility needs an antecedent. We need to link it to something. So if 2 is the starter, 3 cannot go. Because it just says we are now in our vision and at the crossroads in our vision and practice of development. Half a century ago, development began as a hope for a better human possibility, but in the last 50 years, this hope has lost itself in lot of hegemonic applications. So why are we at a crossroads? 4 is telling us why we are at a crossroads. Half a century ago, it started as a hope, but today it has gone lost in the dreary desert of various kinds of hegemonic applications. All right, today 4 and 1 is the mandatory pair. Half a century ago this is what happened, but today we need to rethink this entire vision of shared responsibility, and to do that this calls for the cultivation. To rethink, reconstitute the vision and practice, we need to do this. So 2, 4, 1, 3 is the correct answer. I hope you got that right. Okay, next one. 5 jumbled sentences, odd one out. Odd one out, the best way to go about it is, as you read the passage, think of a theme, that the sentences are talking about. See which 2-3 sentences stick to the same thing and which one doesn't. Is not likely to. Won't take too much time. It has taken a warm fuzzy glow in the advertising world, where its potential is being widely discussed. It's being claimed as an undeniable wave of the future. Something. There is little enthusiasm for this in the scientific arena. For them, marketing is not a science, and only a handful of studies have been published in scientific journals. Advertising world is very excited, but very little response in the scientific arena. Could be linked together, right? Then the new growing field of neuromarketing. Oh, so that's what it's all about. Neuromarketing attempts to reveal. Neuromarketing. So 3 and 4 are talking about neuromarketing, about which the advertising world seems to be very excited, but little enthusiasm in the scientific arena. Looks like they all go together. The marketing gurus have already started drawing on psychology in developing tests and theories, and advertising people have borrowed. So this seems to be out. It might be talking about something else. Therefore, I would say 5 is my odd one out. Neuromarketing, ad world is excited, this world is not excited. Fantastic. Got it? Okay. Next one. The care with which philosophers examine, this is also odd one out, is it? Yeah. The care with which philosophers examine arguments for and against forms of biotechnology makes this an excellent primer on formulating and assessing moral arguments, all right? Although most people find at least some form of genetic engineering disquieting, it's not easy to articulate why. What is wrong with re-engineering with our nature? Genetic re-engineering. Breakthroughs in genetics present us with promises. Ethics of enhancement, genetic engineering it talks about. One argument is that the drive for human perfection through genetics. Genetic engineering, enhancement through genetic, perfection through genetics. So the odd one out is on moral arguments. Could be about anything, biotechnologies, or other 4 are related to genetic engineering, enhancement and all that. Therefore, answer is 1. Easy. Normally I found the jumbled paragraphs, the odd one out easier. Jumbled paragraph. Okay, very silly mistake that students had made here. When I say students, I mean me and a couple of my colleagues also. The US Navy has, this is a para-jumble. The US Navy has long maintained that the Northwest Passage is an international strait through which its commercial and military vessels have the right to pass without seeking Canada's permission. Canada, the US is mentioned for the first time, introduces the Northwest Passage, introduces Canada. Second, Canada, which officially acquired the group of islands forming the Northwest Passage in 1880, claimed sovereignty over all the shipping routes through the passage. Northwest Passage, again, okay, so 1 and 2 would go together. US thinks that it is an international strait and it has the right to pass without seeking Canada's permission. Now, Canada officially acquired the Northwest Passage in 1880 and thinks that it has independence over it. So these are the two controversial or rather divergent positions on this issue. So 1 and 2 could go together. The dispute could be transitory, however, as scientists speculate that the entire Arctic Ocean will soon be ice-free in summer. The US and Canada have never settled the question of access through the passage. 1 and 2 talks about access through the passage. 4 says they've never settled this question, but scientists say they may not have to because all the ice will melt. So 1, 2, 4, 3 is the right answer. Got it? Okay. Next one. Summary. Easy one, but because of, when you find that they mention biologists, physicians, journals, one good way I would at least do is I would jot down, okay? So at least one word here, one word here. So it's easier and actually it's faster and more accurate. Biologists who publish, because remember in the exam I could not underline, biologists who publish their research directly to the web has been labeled as rogue. So this is the case of biologists. If they're publishing directly on the web, they're being called rogue. But physicists have been routinely publishing. Biologists have been called names, but physicists have been routinely publishing research digitally prior to submitting in a peer-reviewed journal. Advocates of preprints argue that quick and open dissemination, so physicists are publishing on the web, right? And advocates of preprints argue that quick and open dissemination of research. So because of this, information is disseminated quickly and openly, speeds up scientific progress and allows for wider access of knowledge. Physicists are able to do this. But some journals still don't accept research previously published as a preprint. Even if the idea of preprint is gaining ground, one of the bigger barriers again goes back to biologists. The problem is that preprints, physicists are able to do it, the advantages of having preprints, but biologists face a barrier is how will they be viewed by members of their research community. Got it? Now we have the important points. Let's just look at the options. One of the advantages of digital preprints of research is that they hasten the dissemination process, but they're not accepted by most scientific communities. Now, seems okay, but where is the question of the difference between biologists and physicists? While digital publication of research is gaining popularity, almost all peer-reviewed journals are reluctant to accept papers. Physics it's happening, so 2 again is misrepresenting the main point. Preprints of research are frowned upon by some scientific fields as they don't undergo a rigorous reviewing process. Has he mentioned this? Right? So again, this is not. Compared to biologists, physicists are less conservative in their acceptance of digital publication of research papers, which allows for faster dissemination of knowledge. So what has he done? He has told you physicists are able to do it, the advantages of publishing on the web and the disadvantages that biologists are still facing. So the best option for summarizing it is 4. Alright? Okay, let's look at the next question. Alternate 4 summaries on creativity. 1 word here, 1 word there, and the option was wrong. Just 1 word, and it was easy to eliminate. But you had to have the time to eliminate it. Creativity is now viewed as the engine of economic progress. Good. Various organizations are devoted to its study and promotion. There are encyclopedias, handbooks, surveying creativity research. But this so creativity is seen as a useful process, and there are lots of things happening around creativity. Encyclopedias, books and handbooks surveying creativity. But this proliferating success has tended to erode creativity's stable identity. It has slowly eroded its stable identity. Why? It has become so invested with its value that it has become impossible to police its meaning and the practices that identify and encourage it. The obsession with the value of creativity has led to erosion of other factors. And how is that happening? Many people and organizations committed to producing original thoughts feel that the undue obsession with the idea of creativity gets in the way of real creativity. One is it has eroded, too much of obsession with creativity has eroded creativity's stable identity. Some of its meaning and practices are getting eroded. And third, that the obsession with the idea of creativity has actually come in the way of creativity. Alright, okay, let's look at which option has expressed this best. The value assigned to creativity, obsession with creativity, too much value given to it, alright, it has become so invested with the value. So the value assigned to creativity has assumed such proportions, has become so large that the concept itself has lost its real meaning, okay, eroded its stable identity, affected its meaning. And this is hampering the engendering of real creativity. This is hampering real creativity from happening, hampering, creating problems for it. Looks good. Second one, the industry that has built up around researching what comprises and encourages creativity has destroyed. This is an extreme word. He has not said it's destroyed creativity. It's hampering creativity. He didn't say it's totally gone. Creativity has proliferated to the extent that it's no longer a stable process. It's stable identity, okay. It's mutating identity. Did he say its identity has got mutated? No. Right? So this is, I'm wondering if this really represents the meaning of the passage. The obsession with original thought, how it can be promoted, has made it impossible for people to define the concept anymore. Is he talking about that we are not able to define what is creativity? Therefore, the correct answer is 1. It's coming in the way, it is hampering the process of creativity. Too much obsession, too much value being given to something is itself being a problem. Okay? Alright. Last question of the set. I hope you got that right. Non-MCQ parajumble. Look forward a few decades to an invention which can end the energy crisis, change the global economy, and curb climate change at a stroke. Commercial fusion power. To gain meaningful insight, logic has to be accompanied by asking probing questions of nature through controlled tests, precise observations, and clever analysis. The greatest of all inventions is the Uber invention that has provided the insights on which others depend, the modern scientific method. Good starting sentence. The greatest of all inventions is the Uber invention that provided the insights on which other insights. Then next 2 will talk about the insights, right? Then look forward to a few decades and 1. Alright, so 3, 2, 1, 4. The greatest is the modern scientific method. To gain meaningful insights, logic has to be accomplished by asking questions. Go a few decades ahead and you will have this problem, and this invention is inconceivable without the scientific method is the concluding one. So 3, 2, 1, 4 is the correct order. Alright, so that completes our analysis of slot 2. As we said, slot 2 was more difficult than the other slots, right? So you can put your scores with you have your response sheets, check your CAT score by visiting the BYJU'S exam prep CAT score predictor. You will know roughly your scores. These were our analysis. Most of them are done. Today slot 3, 5 p.m. is Pradeep Sengupta, who will be discussing the slot 3 answer paper in detail. Make sure all slot 3 people attended. If you enjoyed this session, make sure you like the session, press the like button. Your feedback is very important for us. Leave a comment, share the video with your friends, and do subscribe to the BYJU'S exam prep channel, YouTube and app. Follow us on social platforms. We are there on Instagram, we are there on YouTube, Telegram, Google Play, and you can connect with us on Google Play, and we are of course there on Facebook. Alright, I will see you very soon. Till then, stay safe, stay focused, and all the best for your CAT result. I hope you've done really, really well. The Savitri Krishnamurthy signing off for BYJU'S exam prep. Bye-bye.